nothing shocking here. You guys probably know about the restrictions on international students that the government set, so they're gonna start capping the students. Under the old system, anybody who was on a qualified designated learning institution, if you were getting an associate's degree, you would qualify for a postgrad work permit. So how many of you is anyone international? International? Okay. Oh, great, all of us. So all of us are international. There's no other faculty here, so I can't ask them about their classes. But I would say most of the students at your school are international at the schools you're at? Mostly international?
95%.
Right, so have you noticed any effects on these caps coming in, just generally?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot.
Student demographics and then overall enrollment, is that a
I think
go?
it's very program specific.
Sure, I've heard that
Yeah,
too.
one of my campuses is completely 95% domestic, so that didn't get impacted. Although one of my other campuses is 95% international.
Okay, so there's a big potential there for a lot of downsizing, and we are already seeing that. Public and private schools are downsizing, layoffs are happening, faculty, staff getting cut as well, right? So there's a ripple effect happening, and from what I've heard from the schools I work at, it's going to get worse as we go on. So this is really about a recruitment, retention, hopefully solution that you can all pitch in on. So the new rules now, if you want to get that associate's degree, so most international students are trying to get permanent residency. The quickest pathway to do that was under the associate's degree to get the postgrad work permit, to get the PR. All of you are international, I'm international, I know the situation. So what happened was the government basically said you can now get an associate's degree in these 6 different streams and still qualify for that 2-year associate's degree and still get the 3-year PGWP, right? That's the new factor. So what they did was basically mandate in these certain fields. Most of them are related to the trades. Now there's a problem there. I teach sociology. I do not teach in the trades. So why am I doing a presentation on student recruitment? Because this affects me, because these cuts happen across the board. And if the schools and the government are emphasizing things like STEM or trades programs, that pushes me out, right? If you don't need to take sociology classes, you don't need me, or French or English or whatever it is, and vice versa. The same thing if the trades are affected. So what I've tried to come up with was a solution to this problem of student recruitment. How do we fill this gap that's going down? So option 1, do nothing. Maintain the current approach. There's an asterisk there. Because what that means is from an institutional level, you don't have to change any of your curriculum. 2, start to push towards these. Simple solution, schools, institutions should start to emphasize these 6 fields because students from other parts of the world are going to want that quickest PR pathway and maybe they'll streamline into this. Again, it doesn't help me. 3, you go offer bachelor's and above. So if you get a bachelor's degree, you still qualify for the postgrad work permit. For you international students, what's the problem with that? If you're trying to go on the fastest pathway to PR, you're going to extend your time of study by 2 years. And it's going to cost you more money. Also, from an institutional perspective, it's a lot of work to try and start to be a bachelor's degree offering institution. There's a whole lot of bureaucratic stuff you have to go through there. So that's why I'm going back to number 1. Don't do anything. Don't change the course offerings you have. There's a solution, I think, somewhere else. So in British Columbia, there are dual credit systems for secondary students. So dual credit courses, they have different versions, college and high school, college and secondary school, different names. In different schools across BC partner up with certain schools, universities, and offer these. Sometimes the classrooms are still in the secondary schools themselves, and they're taught by those instructors there. Not too many of them actually go to the colleges or universities to take the courses. It is a patchwork system in BC. There is no national thing here, so all the school districts, it's hard to count the numbers essentially. But lots of schools, whether it's UBC, this is public schools in central Okanagan, so this is in the secondary school system who are partnering up. Again, a lot of these tend to lean towards the trades. Nothing wrong with that, but again, that is the emphasis kind of in the world we're living in right now, especially with STEM degree programs. They do make it actually easier to attain PR if you do get a STEM degree. So you don't actually have to have the job requirement. So again, that might be pushing students in that direction. And then again, just another example of some schools offering this. So now the thing with the dual credit program is you're still a secondary student. There is another alternative though, and it's called Running Start. And that's where you saw that title of the presentation, which might not have made any sense to you, but Running Start and other versions of this with different names run all across the United States. Running Start is a huge program in the state of Washington on our border. So what this is like a dual credit system that BC has, but this is completely different. When you are in a Running Start program, you are a college and university student. You are not taking classes in the high school or secondary school. You are on campus as a university student, as either 11th or 12th grade student. I know this because I am family members, my brother did this process, and I applied to this process but failed when I was in school in the United States as well. So this is a very popular program that runs, and I've got some numbers, if I can give you. In other states, I'll get to that on the next slide, but other states have this. Minnesota has a big, robust system. Idaho, this is a huge, under different names, huge program in the United States. So let me go back here actually. So over 80% of all schools, high schools in the United States offer some sort of dual credit program. Over 80% allow you to take, not AP classes, actual college credit courses. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be Running Start. You still might be in your school taking those classes, but there's going to be a huge percentage of that 80 that are going to have Running Start type of programs where you're actually on the campuses like this. So a couple differences between the two. So in the BC system that we have, dual credit, it's very dependent on the districts themselves, the schools themselves who they're partnering with. At the Running Start example, it's a statewide. It's run by the state government. And again, it's also going to focus not just on technical stuff. So in the dual credit system in British Columbia, they do tend to focus more on the technical skills and trades, whereas in Running Start, you can also take arts and humanities and social sciences as well. The other thing here, again, when you're a Running Start student, you are a college or university student. Over 80% of all students who are in Running Start are full-time university or college students, even though they're 11th and 12th graders. So they're simultaneously going to earn potentially an associate's degree and a high school diploma at the same time. And again, in BC, that is not the case. You're most likely going to be in the secondary school. Another thing here, tuition in the Running Start program is covered by the state, or in this case, if we were going to try and do it here, it'd be by the provincial government. And again, here it's going to vary based on districts, but a lot of the times the districts here will also pick up the cost of the tuition, but books and fees and stuff are usually on the students' expenses themselves. Either way, you're usually saving on the tuition in either case. Flexibility, again, lots of different courses are offered here in the Running Start program, but in the BC system, a little more focused on the trades. By the numbers, if we look nationally. So again, over 80% of schools offer some sort of dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment or college in the high school or university in the high school type branding. That's substantially more than British Columbia offers in the dual credit system. And again, it's difficult to say how much of these are also kind of Running Start equivalents, but there are at least a handful of states, Hawaii, Idaho, Minnesota, Washington, that have very robust, massive institutions. And I'll give you those numbers on this next slide. So it's hard to predict what the numbers, not predict, but add up the national numbers, but I can give you specific numbers to Washington because they do produce this data. So 15 to 17% of every single 11th and 12th grade student in a Washington State high school is a university or college student. That's how big it is. Massive, massive numbers. You're looking at, between the full-time enrollment, you're looking between 26,000 and 30,000 students that are in the high school system just in one state alone. You add it up, the United States nationally has over 1 million students, 11th and 12th grade students across the country in colleges and universities doing these Running Start type programs. Split it up even more. You're looking at between, you do the math, you crunch those numbers, that's your credits. In 1 year, that's between 71 and 75,000 courses in the state of Washington alone So you can imagine that's a 5-credit course, so it's gonna even be even more for a 3-credit course. So massive, massive opportunity for recruitment and enrollment. And again, schools across the United States are doing similar programs. So BC by the numbers. Now we're gonna trickle off. Yes, okay. Here, so part of this is looking at international students. That's why I asked you at the start of this. Only about 6% of international students in British Columbia high schools are international. So the majority are gonna be domestic students. That is a potential there for recruitment for international students because that's a lot of the reasons they do come here as 12th grade students is to get that British Columbia or Canadian diploma because it does make it easier to transfer into university and college systems. So there's already a good amount here. By the numbers, that's about 2,700 students just in BC last year alone. So the question then becomes, if America can do this, then so can Canada. Because obviously what's going on in the United States there. So I want to pick your brains on this. We've got, just to do some Trump math, we've got like 20,000 people in this room right now. You guys all have all kinds of knowledge on these things. Do you think this is, I'm not even gonna throw out the is it possible, because America is doing that. And I say that as almost a dual citizen of Canada. If America, this should be a shoo-in for British Columbia to be able to pull this off. It's already been time tested, it's been around for 30 plus years just in the state of Washington, and there's been millions of graduates who've done this program. So BC does not have to reinvent the wheel, they're just gonna have to change the funding structure. But does this seem like a feasible solution to maybe changing the lowering international student enrollment numbers? Because the selling point is, if you come to British Columbia as a 10th or 11th grade student, international students, you've already calculated the math. You're still graduating with an AA in 2 years. So you're still 18, 20 years old, whatever it is, the math still stays the same. You're still getting that degree because you're graduating now maybe with a bachelor's degree at the same age you would be graduating with the associate's degree. So you're not spending any more time, you're also getting half your degree paid for, and you're coming out with a better degree in the end. So that's why it goes back to these schools don't technically have to change anything. They just have to start to partner up with secondary schools. And those students are already there because it's gonna give secondary school students opportunities that they never had before. Dual credit is one thing, taking a couple credits and transferring it into university. Knocking out an entire degree by the time you graduate high school is a whole other thing. Right? So it's gonna be beneficial to international and domestic students, which could be a potential feeder, is getting those 94%, which are secondary students in BC for domestic students, to start to come in and knock out their early stuff, and then maybe they go transfer on to UBC or SFU or whatever it is, you're still getting those students to fill that enrollment gap. Does this sound?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I would say no, like not entirely plausible because it's just a volume game. Like we just don't, the international students provided people that we did not produce in Canada.
Well, so that's why I was leaning on also the rest. So the other thing too is, in Washington State, they can't decline anyone for participating if you transfer to what's called a community college. Universities still have the selective application, so you might have a lower number as far as taking in students to your tech or whatever the school is. So it's not necessarily going to replace the volume of international students, but it could increase domestic.
It could be a no but situation as well because the laws affect international students coming for post-secondary. And if those laws don't exist for international students coming for high school, then it could be fine. In fact, it could be the pathway around the current laws.
That's kind of what I was looking at, yeah. And then, so like, I'm not getting into logistics, because I mean, that's something else that had to be, policyed out, but, and again, you could just kind of replicate a similar structure in the US, but the other thing too is, what about the domestic side of it? Is that not a potential?
Well, yeah, I think so. Like, so we have something like that, and I guess I had some questions, like,
Sure.
So do they partner with specific universities? That's what they do, right? The high schools and specific high schools and specific universities?
Yes. Oh, where? In like the Running Start program?
States, yeah.
So the Running Start program is run by the state, so all the public schools are in it.
And so
All the public colleges and universities.
so students don't have to go to a certain high school and then can transfer to a certain university, they're
Any-
eligible for any.
Any student from any high school in Washington could go to any community college, regardless of GPA, regardless of anything.
And do they get a benefit, like if they transfer directly to third year, like students who transfer directly to third year, it is a little easier than trying to get in at first year.
Oh, yeah, they've already so yeah, the difference is here is when those students are, say they knock out 2 years at Alexander College, and then they transfer, yeah, you are getting a leg up. But also those students, if you're doing it from 11th grade to 12th grade, you're also graduating with an associate's at 18.
Yeah, right.
So, and you also didn't pay your tuition.
Okay.
Because the province in this case would pay the
Yeah.
tuition or reimburse the school.
Right, so it seems like, I guess that was my observations, it seems like a cost saving measure. And then what do you think about, like, it's less time in school overall if the students are kind of like overlapping high school and
Well, they don't overlap, they don't go to high school. So 80% of all the students in Running Start are full-time. So my little brother did it, he never went, so he was done in 10th grade, and then he was 11th and 12th grade college student, knocked out his AA at 18 and then transferred to university. He never went to high school other than his graduation 2 years later. So it's completely, that's the difference between the BC system and like a Running Start program is you are a university student.
so do you see a problem with that? Like effectively it's fewer years at school, if not less, like actual course time. Is there any issue with that, do you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's like, as a 16-year-old, not everyone's, like myself, don't think I was prepared for it, that's why I didn't do it. So not every 16-year-old or 17-year-old is probably qualified to do that. They will vet people from going to that. So yeah, there's definitely gonna be, is a cultural change, does that pull teachers away from the secondary schools? There's a lot of things going on there, but it is a very successful, millions of graduates, yeah.
Could I urge us to look at it from a structural perspective? I begin by saying this, excuse me, frog in my throat. Tertiary education is in trouble. Universities are in trouble. I've been in the biz for 40 years, just retired. Unless the post-secondary sector changes dramatically, it's at risk within the next 10 years, if not sooner, and in the States, and maybe even sooner than that. So what I would argue is that the boundary between secondary, K-12, primary, secondary, and tertiary education, university, is now obsolete. Why? Because those boundaries were set, and they're arbitrary, they're perfectly arbitrary. They were set in an era in which 5 to 8% of the population, if that, went on to tertiary education. It's now above 60%. So the first 2 years of a university education, if not the first 4 years, are in many cases essentially the equivalent of high school in 1945. We have to blow this all up and rethink it because the segmentation of primary, secondary, and tertiary, and then the tripartite degree structure, bachelor's, master's, and doctorate, are all obsolete. We're hanging on by our fingernails, as Jessica would have said this morning. But who's going to go first? Who's going to be the bleeding edge of change? Joe, I would love to see this presentation in front of the Ministries of Education and Advanced Education.
Yeah, they're the ones who are gonna be able to call the shot. I mean, yeah.
And we do have in BC, we've got AP, right, advanced placement, we've got the IB program, which don't yet lead to associate degrees, but they do offer, placement in like say second year university or third year university even. So.
But those are still, so the same thing with those is just to get, even though I teach sociology, that's still college or university in the high school. I'm trying to get the students into the college, I'm trying to save my own job. So I want the enrollment numbers, I want them to be in my class at Alexander College or in New York Tech. That's the fact, because that's what I'm trying to do here.
I think it will work to some extent, but it won't be enough to make up for the shortfall, like the actual.
Not just, I'm saying, no, I agree, but it might slow the bleeding. And again, it's not, there's no excuses. The United States, I mean, I'm from America. I mean, it's a dumpster fire. I mean, that picture that I have of Trump there is, disbanding the Department of Education. So if the United States can run these on a state basis, it's not nationally, and have millions of students go through this system, I mean, there's literally no excuses for why Canada should not be able to do this, or at least British Columbia.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'm gonna block every excuse.
One of the girls looks really unhappy there, and the other one looks like she's holding her book upside down,
Well,
but
But if they're in a state like Minnesota, they can go to college for free. I mean,
so this is,
we don't even have that in BC.
so people are going for free, but then where does the money come from?
So in Washington, it's paid for, it's a state-run program.
Mhm.
So in BC, that's the problem with BC, is these dual credit systems are all district-based,
Yeah.
it's all patchwork. And whereas in the state systems, it's all state top-down, is regulated. So it'd be exactly what the Ministry of Education would be the call the shot.
The other thing in the Canadian context is public sector universities are increasingly unsustainable in terms of finances. We're seeing this multiple operating deficits. Waterloo, for goodness sakes, I really find STEM University is 70 million in the hole in their operating budget this year. It's staggering. And the cost of operations in traditional universities are simply not sustainable. They're just not.
I mean, I'm sort of like, not to overly broaden the conversation, but I would say that we would want to look at the broader picture of finances and then the role of corporations and like different tax rates and so on to dissect that.
What's clear though, I don't mean to argue, but what's clear is that the politicians are delivering exactly what the voters want. Voters don't seem to care about post-secondary. It's just not on people's radar, except for people involved in post-secondary. Politicians like Ford in Ontario are simply reflecting what the electorate is telling them to do. That's not funding universities very well. And then if you look at competing demands now for public funding for healthcare with an aging population, increasing technology, increasing medicines, social spending. If you're sitting at a cabinet table or a treasury board table in any of the Canadian provinces, advanced education is not high in the pecking order. Not high in the pecking order at all. So, as I leave the profession after all of these years, I'm really urging younger people to think, what do we do to save the best? But we have to blow up so much of it because it's completely obsolete, including the tripartite degree structure. It's just obsolete.
In the antiquated system of waiting until grade 12 to go to college or university, there's tons of 11th and 12th grade students that are probably just itching, just want to get out of the high school environment and get on.
I think it would have benefited as a high school student from probably going early to college.
Or just having the opportunity,
Right, just
knowing it was a possibility.
Right, and some of my classmates did because their parents were professors or something, so they were able to attend. So now I'm a professor. I've offered the opportunity to go to my kids, but pressure free. Like one is college age and has been for almost a year now, not gone. But the other one is 16, so there's advantages. And then one of the other presentations, they kept saying their professor was there, and he kept saying undergrad, and they've done original research. And I was like, are you guys really undergrad? Aren't you master's students? And they're like, no, we're undergrad. But they're probably better than some master's students at what they're doing. So I agree that maybe there's just benchmarks that people should hit in order to have a credential or something.
And the other thing to consider too in a multi-university system like BC's or Ontario's, there is no longer any remote justification for having individual university senates ticking through routine curricular approvals on introductory calculus. It should be a common curriculum across the system, across the country. There are not many ways to teach calculus. I mean, you can have very skillful teachers of calculus, but the basic skills to be mastered are there. To have individual university senates, 22 in Ontario, saying, well, we're going to revise calculus, introductory calculus, or differential calculus, whatever. We'll do it this way at Trent. We'll do it this way at Laurier. We'll do it. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And it's costing millions of dollars that could be better deployed, really enriching the experience of students in the classroom and things like this.
And I was hoping there'd be administrators here, because it's like, we've got 6 months maybe until, the things are already hitting the fan right now with layoffs and cuts, and I've heard that it's gonna start keep going that direction. So the schools, you can't just lean on them. The international students aren't there. And the damage has also been done to a degree, that students are gonna look elsewhere in the world. So they need to lean on something. And
yeah, there are other strategies, but yeah, no, basically I agree with that. Like the brand of Canada from the marketing people, it's damaged, and that's more of a problem than the laws apparently being changed. Although I have hope Cardi will go, hey, wait a second, economically this doesn't make sense. So
if you can get domestic students who wanna go to UBC and they can get a head start and transfer,
Absolutely.
why wouldn't you wanna do that? Yep.
I have a question, so taking up on the conversation about some of the current systems being a little obsolete and what you said about some bachelor students doing a lot better than what masters
Yes,
are.
yeah.
Has there been data on the outcomes of the Running Start program in the US? Any kind of comparisons with students who are not taking it, students who have taken it, outcomes, what has come out of, their education, any kind of data?
Oh, yeah, I haven't gone through all of it, I mean, there's tons of data on it, but it's gonna depend, just like any school system, so some people will start the program and they might quit. Some of them go from full-time, they'll drop down to part-time enrollment. I just know from my younger brother's case, who actually went through the program, he moved through the system fine. He wanted to get out of high school, he didn't like being in high school, he wanted to just get on with history. So he was able to do that, but yeah, I'm sure you're gonna see the same dynamics at the Running Start program like this with, there's 1 million people enrolled across the country right now. Same dynamics as the high secondary, you're gonna have people failing, not showing up, all that kind of stuff.
I think some more insight into that, especially comparing to students who have not taken the
Sure.
program, along with what came out of it, like what did it impact their careers, what kind of uptake did we see, all of that would help take the dialogue further about its implementation.
Sure. They did say in the state stuff here, I do have, if I put this on, somehow if you get access to this, the state data, they produce this document every year on Running Start. So the enrollment numbers have held steady the whole time. So it's not like there's been a drop or anything like that. It's been successful, so I'm assuming it's a good sign. The enrollment numbers continue to stay basically the same for the last decade, so.
I mean, one of the things, I don't know if you looked at it or if it has changed, they did studies on like who, in places where post-secondary is free, Australia and Germany and things, they did studies on who would take post-secondary if it's free and versus if it's not, and people worry that more people will enroll for it if it's free. But they found that enrollment doesn't increase, it just, who enrolls changes.
Sure, exactly.
So, I wonder if now that's different, if more people actually, like a larger percentage of the population actually goes to post-secondary.
So yeah, if you go to community college, they can't say no. If you go to Sociology, so if your universities can still vet though. If you're doing Running Start in a university, they can still vet you and say, no, you don't have a high enough GPA. So it's still the same rules there. But community colleges open to anyone in the US. Yep.
We're out
Yeah.
of time.
Is there someone else, can I close this? Can I answer this while you clear me
Joe,
out?
thanks for a wonderful.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yes.